Curious as to the issue of energy and green growth. How do you plan on making good on the promises to have all of your transportation needs met by green energy as opposed to fossil fuels by the year 2030?
Well, I mean, we have decided that Denmark should be a fossil-free country in 2050. And in order to do so, I mean, we have changed our entire energy system. On good windy days, we produce all our electricity from windmills. And of course, transportation is an important part of that. So we have defined the challenge to the car industry that beyond 2030, we will not allow new fossil cars in Denmark.
Exactly. So how difficult will it be once 2030 comes and there are no fossil fuels allowed anymore?
Well, it's of course a huge challenge, and we are not a car-producing country ourselves. But if we join forces, and I'm happy to say that other European countries are following the same path, I'm sure that that would put a pressure on the industry so they come up with the new technology. And in the meanwhile, we have decided to give some tax incentives to people who buy non-expensive electrical cars.
Speaking of other European countries, we spent a lot of this week talking about Brexit and Italy. Let me ask you how concerned you are as a European Prime Minister that Brexit is becoming a very protracted negotiation.
Well, I'm concerned, but I have decided to stay optimistic because even though we didn't reach an agreement yesterday, I mean, there's still time. And we need both sides, UK and Europe, to be creative in order to find a solution. It will be a disaster, not least for UK, if we end up with a hard Brexit. But of course, that's a possibility, and therefore we are taking precautions. The day after the referendum in UK, we established a task force within the government, and we are preparing for a hard Brexit. It's not something we want to achieve. Actually, we are working hard to achieve the opposite.
Another problem is Italy, its banking system having a little trouble today in the markets. I'm concerned to see how you are reacting to Italy's budget proposal and whether you think it might be destabilising to the European economy.
Well, Denmark is not a part of the Eurozone. We could easily be because we have a very sound fiscal policy and we apply to all the EU regulations. And of course, I would wish that the Italian did the same thing. I mean, but what we are seeing in Italy now is not the biggest European challenge right now. I mean, at the top of the agenda right now is Brexit. That is what really could destabilize the Eurozone.
A quick question on Sweden and its inability to form a government. How concerned are you that that is going to seep across into other Scandinavian nations and that perhaps there might be, some populist backlash against current governments?
Well, I mean, it's not up to me to intervene in domestic policy in our neighboring country. I'm totally convinced that they will find a solution. I realize that the former, or actually his current Prime Minister, Stefan Löfven, is now appointed to the one who should try to build a coalition. Whether he will succeed or not, I don't know. But I mean, from my perspective, being a Prime Minister in Denmark, I'm totally convinced that Sweden is such a stabilized society that they will overcome this.
Let's move to Danske Bank. Your business minister has said that it may face a fine as high as 3 to 4 billion kroner, but in fact, other estimates have that much higher. Do you think that further measures to sort of tighten anti-money laundering laws might be helpful here?
Well, we have already made a cross-party agreement last week with a huge majority in the Danish Parliament where we are tightening our policy, and we are actually doubling fines in order to fight money laundering. And I guess you could say that Denmark is a country which have prospered a lot from globalization, and what we are witnessing now is the flip side of that, international economic crime. And I think the real solution to that problem is even closer international cooperation. That's why I have suggested that we now should analyze the possibility of Denmark joining the banking union, because that could be a part of an answer to avoid money laundering in the future.
Right. Would you consider joining the EU banking union?
Yeah, if I was the only one to decide, the answer would be a clear yes. But what we have done now is that we have asked people to make an analyze, to analyze this, what is pro and contra, and I have defined a deadline, which will be summer next year, and then we will take a final decision. And I did that previous to what happened in Danske Bank. But what we have seen in Danske Bank most recently, I think that's an argument in favor of joining the banking union.
So just one more question, if I could come back to Danske. I'm curious as to whether Denmark has received or would like indeed any assurance from the US that any measures would be measured and not threaten the financial stability of Denmark, given that we have, the DOJ involved, the US Treasury, the SEC and other agencies.
I think it's important to bear in mind that the money laundering didn't take place in Denmark, but actually in Estonia, in a branch bought by Danske Bank a couple of years ago. And we have handled this challenge, bold and without any hesitation, in order to send a clear signal, of course also to the US, that we take this very, very seriously. And that is also the reason why my Minister of Business took this initiative to 8 double fines in Denmark. And I hope that the international financial sector will take this as a clear signal that we will not accept what have happened in Danske Bank.
Finally, Mr. Prime Minister, what goal would you love to see from the P4G Summit, the climate change summit that you are attending today in Copenhagen?
Well, we took this initiative together with 7 other countries in order to change words into action. I mean, I had the honor to co-chair the UN meeting 3 years ago, where we adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, and now we have to achieve these goals, and we can't do that just by talking. So the idea behind this summit, which is extraordinary, is to bring people together from academia, startups, big CEOs from some of the biggest companies in the world, prime ministers as myself, in order to define concrete partnerships which can be scaled up. And that's exactly what we intend to do. And tomorrow we are going to launch 26 concrete partnerships around the world.